It was unavoidable, but the 6 months I spent in the hospital were extremely painful. My muscles had clearly weakened. I wanted to find peace in my own home as soon as possible. However, when Chris and I returned home, we were greeted by a mountain of our mother-in-law Sharon and sister-in-law Dolly's belongings. What is this? What happened here? This wasn't here in the morning. Sharon and Dolly's belongings were supposed to be temporarily stored. I was told everything would be cleared out by the time I was discharged. Well, this is our house now, so if you don't like it, you should leave. Exactly. Sick person is a nuisance, so please leave. Unbelievable. This wasn't the agreement, and this is mine and Chris's house. Seeing me stunned, Sharon and Dolly burst out laughing. We were both shocked and disappointed. I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm really sick of Sharon and Dolly's irresponsible actions. Chris seemed to feel the same way. It was evident on his face. We looked at each other and nodded. Let's leave this place. Yes, let's do that. I'm done with these unpleasant feelings. There's no need to put up with Sharon and Dolly's selfish behavior. Chris and I decided to go ahead with the plan we had been considering. I am Anita. I'm 31 years old and work for a company that manufactures surveying equipment. Chris and I married at 30 after 2 years of workplace romance. Both work and married life are going well, and I'm living fulfilling days. However, interactions with my mother-in-law Sharon and sister-in-law Dolly can sometimes be stressful. Both mother and daughter have very bad personalities. It's hard to believe that Chris is related to them by blood. Through Sharon and Dolly, I have experienced numerous hardships. Today, I plan to talk about various events from that period. After we got married, Chris and I were entrusted with managing a house from my maternal uncle. My uncle, who has no spouse or children and is elderly, lives in a facility. Since the house would be empty, we were advised to live there and eventually inherited it. The house is old but has many rooms, which was nice. The problem is that it's not far from Chris's parents' house. It's about a 30-minute drive. Because it's relatively close within the same city, we started being called to his parents' house every weekend. Initially, I thought that was natural, a kind of rite of passage. I thought it was just treated as a family event and that we would eventually be left alone. However, the reality was different. Mother-in-law Sharon began to use me as her legs and purse, regularly calling me out every holiday. I'm sorry, Anita, but my back hurts and I can't move freely. Yes, that's fine. What else could I have answered? There was a need to go to the hospital. Shopping at the supermarket was also necessary. I forgot my wallet. It's a financially tight month. She used those excuses to exploit me. I drove the car as instructed and prepaid at various stores as requested. Gradually, Sharon began to take my efforts for granted and became increasingly arrogant. Whenever I slightly object or resist, she acts as if she is the victim. Why do you look so dissatisfied? It's just a little call. You are a daughter-in-law, it's natural for you to serve your mother-in-law. You understood that when you got married, didn't you? I told you I had plans this week. It's unfair to call me despite that. If you don't like it, you should refuse. Since you came, it couldn't have been that important, right? Even if we are not related by blood, you should prioritize your parents. Gradually, Sharon lost her restraint towards me and started to use me for house cleaning and preparing lunch. She also ordered me to replace the sliding doors, weed the garden, and clean the gutters. Although Sharon complains of back pain, its authenticity is uncertain. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was just an excuse to exploit me. There is a particularly memorable interaction with Sharon. It's about the time we found a bug in the kitchen. Not just me, Sharon also detested that bug immensely. Upon seeing it, she would scream like a child and move about 33 feet away. The same reaction occurred that day. When I exclaimed, a bug? Sharon screamed and fled the kitchen. Deal with it quickly. Get rid of it. Unbelievable. It's Anita's fault. At my fault? How does that make sense? Because it is. It's because Anita hasn't cleaned the kitchen properly. That's why the bug appeared. Deal with it quickly. Don't bring it here. I couldn't help but sigh. Isn't she responsible at all who lives here regularly? Blaming me, who is only here on weekends, is just putting herself above reproach. Not only Sharon, but my sister-in-law Dolly, who lives with her, is terrible too. Dolly is a divorced woman who returned to her original home about 3 years ago after her husband cheated on her. She loves cigarettes, gambling, and alcohol much like a middle-aged man. She is always irritated, and dealing with her is painful. Especially problematic is her change into an uncontrollable personality when drunk. Behaving violently. Dolly, who throws things around and causes trouble, is a great nuisance to everyone around her. It seems she is deeply dissatisfied with her situation since her divorce. She tried to drown her frustrations in alcohol. It's really troublesome. When Chris was away on a business trip over the weekend, I often received calls from Sharon about Dolly. Anita, Dolly has called from the bar. Can you come pick her up? Do I need to go? Shouldn't she take a taxi? It seems she's run out of money. Besides, it sounds like she's caused trouble at the bar. Reluctantly, I headed to the bar where I found Dolly completely drunk. When I told the staff that I was her family, they all looked troubled. Drunk Dolly had broken dishes, messed up the food, and caused trouble for other customers. As a result, many customers left, which not only affected the day's sales but also damaged the establishment. Later, a significant amount of compensation was demanded, and both Sharon and Dolly were unable to hide their surprise. There were multiple calls from the police to pick up Dolly. I became well acquainted with the local officers. There are countless issues and bitter incidents related to Dolly. She really is a problematic person. When Sharon teams up with her, these types of problems multiply. When Chris is away, they constantly complain to me. Perhaps due to the familiarity of our relationship, their intrusive nature began to show more and more. Even in close relationships, etiquette is required, but Sharon and Dolly seem to care little about this. Chris also seems to be struggling under the influence of his mother and sister. Just a moment, Chris, could you lend me about $1,000? Money again, and $1,000 at that. What for? I'm taking mom to a spa. Is there a problem with that as a son? Chris, is it okay for mom's back to stay like this? Sharon and Dolly often demanded money from Chris. The purpose was to visit hot springs or spas under the pretext of Sharon's health. It's truly brazen. Chris and I are overwhelmed with work and hardly have the leisure to enjoy holidays. On the other hand, Sharon and Dolly, who do not work, were living relatively comfortably. I am not satisfied with this situation. During weekdays, I am busy with work, and on weekends, I have to respond to the demands of Sharon and Dolly at their home. This routine was causing significant stress to both my body and mind. Before I knew it, my health was deteriorating. I couldn't recover from fatigue even with rest, and I constantly felt gloomy. Even when I had time to relax with Chris, I was always sighing. Unlike mom, maybe Anita should also take some rest somewhere. Really, it's unusual for me to feel so tired. We need to do something about it. Chris and I hope to have children in the future, and I will soon turn 32. Ideally, I would like to have our first child in my early 30s. For that, it's necessary to maintain physical health and reduce mental stress. The sudden dizziness I felt was on a Friday night, accompanied by intense pain. With a severe headache, I couldn't even stand and express the abnormality to Chris. It was a very scary experience. I realized that my speech was becoming unclear. Chris's complexion changed. "Stay still, I'm calling an ambulance," he said hurriedly. After tests at the emergency hospital, I was diagnosed with a cerebrovascular disorder. Being diagnosed with a stroke in my 30s was a life-threatening condition if mistaken. It was fortunate that Chris was by my side and could respond immediately. I don't smoke, drink, or have issues with high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Yet why did I have a stroke? It seems even the doctors couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. It might also be because of mom and sister. Anita was always under pressure. I'm sorry, but I suspected that too. It might have been a problem that you endured it for so long. Anyway, it was fortunate that you received treatment quickly. We must regain your health as soon as possible. My hospitalization was prolonged. Due to a cerebrovascular issue, hospital stays are often long, but mine was extended further due to signs of depression. The visit from Sharon and Dolly is an unforgettable memory. Despite Chris forbidding their visits, they came without permission and said whatever they wanted. Is it true you collapsed? Come back soon. We are in trouble. That's right. There are so many things we need you to do, like washing and cleaning. Actually, I need to be hospitalized too. Look, my back pain is terrible. Get well soon and come back. Oh, we'll borrow your room while you're hospitalized, okay? Borrow the room? What on earth does that mean? After a while, Chris arrived. He was furious to see Sharon and Dolly. Hey, I said stop. Why are you in Anita's hospital room? Quiet down. Let us visit. It's only natural since we're family. And make sure to tell Anita about that thing. Okay, bye. Sharon and Dolly left quickly. Chris apologized, looking sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them. I am truly amazed by the selfish behavior of Sharon and Dolly. When I asked about that thing, it turned out to be about the renovation of their family home. Remember, there was a day with very strong winds recently? The family home is old, so tiles flew off the roof, and it was damaged by debris flying around. Because of that, rain started leaking through the roof. It seems they had to call a repair service to fix the house. During the repair period, they needed to move some belongings somewhere. That's when Sharon and Dolly proposed using our house. I understand. I don't mind. I'll be in the hospital for a while anyway. Really, that helps a lot. Thank you. We'll make sure everything is cleared up before you get discharged. However, the situation was unexpected. After 6 months of hospitalization, when I returned home, there was a large amount of Sharon and Dolly's belongings there. It was unavoidable, but the 6 months I spent in the hospital were extremely painful. My muscles had clearly weakened. I wanted to find peace in my own home as soon as possible. However, when Chris and I returned home, we were greeted by a mountain of our mother-in-law Sharon and sister-in-law Dolly's belongings. Chris was also surprised on the spot. Shouldn't they have cleared everything up before I got back? What was going on? What is this? What happened here? This wasn't here in the morning. Sharon and Dolly's belongings were supposed to be temporarily stored. I was told everything would be cleared out by the time I was discharged. The movers brought them in at noon. It's fine, the house is big enough. That's right. The family home is very old, and it turned out that it was a rented house. We had to leave there and come here. Now we have no choice but to live here. So, kicking us out would be pointless. I was appalled by Sharon and Dolly's selfish behavior. To force their way in while blocking their own path. Such selfish actions should not be allowed. Chris strongly criticized this point. However, Sharon and Dolly decided to ignore it. As the argument heated up, Sharon incredibly lost her temper. Well, this is our house now, so if you don't like it, you should leave. Exactly. Sick person is a nuisance, so please leave. Unbelievable. This wasn't the agreement, and this is mine and Chris's house. Seeing me stunned, Sharon and Dolly burst out laughing. We were both shocked and disappointed by the outrageous behavior. It was unbearable. Just hearing their laughter made me feel sick to my stomach. Chris was concerned about my health, worried that it might relapse. It was truly very tough. Half a month after Sharon and Dolly started staying at our house, they began planning another trip. They said they wanted to refresh their tired bodies after cleaning up from the move. So, Chris, could you lend me another $1,000? What are you talking about? You haven't paid back the first amount. Just give it without complaining. Think of it as filial piety. Dolly insisted, but Chris firmly refused. I am really fed up with Sharon and Dolly's irresponsible behavior. It seems Chris feels the same way. It was clear on his face. Ignoring their irritation over not getting the money, we looked at each other and nodded. Let's leave this place. Yes, let's do that. I'm done with these unpleasant feelings. There's no need to put up with Sharon and Dolly's selfish behavior. Chris and I decided to go ahead with the plan we had been considering. In fact, since they moved in, we had been waiting for a time when the in-laws would be away. Without Chris giving them money, we used our savings, and Sharon and Dolly went on their trip. Afterward, we quickly started to take action. We organized the belongings, instructed the movers, and then contacted a real estate agent to decide to part with our beloved home. A call from Dolly came into my smartphone a month later. She was clearly upset, and Sharon's yelling could be heard in the background. No wonder, as the house they had lived in just a few days ago had been put on the market. What's happening? Explain. Why can't we get into the house? Where are our belongings? Explain properly. I forgot to inform you, but that house has already been sold. What? You sold it? How could you do this without permission? Why? I don't need to take such accusations. The house was registered in my name. What I do with it is my choice. What can they say after they force their way in? Neither Chris nor I ever intended to concede anything to Sharon or Dolly. I'm sorry, but aren't you the ones who created this situation, Sharon and Dolly? I did not want to sell that house. Wait, what do you mean by that? Are you saying this is our fault? Yes, exactly. The stress from you two might have contributed to my illness. Isn't it natural to want to distance ourselves? That's ridiculous. Don't bring up your illness. Can anyone truly claim that they are completely unrelated? Indeed, I was suffering because of Sharon and Dolly's actions. Dolly was still yelling on the phone. Tell me where you put the belongings, quickly. The room is empty. Our belongings should be there. Where did they go? Tell me. I won't hesitate to sue. Don't worry, your belongings are safely stored in a warehouse. Do you want them back? Of course. What are you thinking? If so, there is one condition. Please do not interfere with us anymore. If you promise not to be involved with us anymore, I will tell you where the belongings are. I have no intention of responding to any more calls or demands for money. From now on, I want to live my life in a different place with as little involvement as possible. At that proposal, Sharon, who was talking on the phone, laughed mockingly. That's absurd. I am your mother-in-law. Such ties cannot just be cut. I want to cut off the tie that supposedly cannot be cut. After that, Chris took over the phone. It seems he too had a lot to say to his mother and sister. With an unusually stern expression, he voiced his determination. Mom and sister, you went too far. You lied to me and forced the move. I've been angry since that day. I don't even want to see your faces anymore. Wait, Chris, there's no need to be so angry. What are you talking about, Chris? You're the younger brother, don't get cheeky. Don't get ahead of yourself. You're unemployed and divorced. Who do you think paid for this trip? I'm not giving you any more money. Chris's voice was furious. His fierceness was considerable. Sharon and Dolly felt the gravity of the situation this time. Let's calm down and talk, they suggested. Then they asked for details about the location of the storage and the handling of the belongings. Everything went as planned. Chris and I exchanged glances and arranged a meeting with Sharon and Dolly. 3 days later, we gathered them at a small cafe. Sharon and Dolly had been staying in a hotel for the past few days, looking pale, but they seemed to think they could still dominate us with their assertive attitude as before. We're here. Hurry up and tell us the location of the warehouse. You're also paying for the hotel stay. That's not happening. Before you say something like that, pay back the money I spent on the trip. I've spent nearly $5,000 to date. Pay it back quickly. Chris's presence was intimidating. It was hard to imagine from his usually calm demeanor. They seemed to feel that they should not anger him any further. Immediately, Sharon and Dolly softened their approach and began to smile ingratiatingly. Wait a minute. We didn't mean to make you angry. We were just a bit shocked and frustrated over a small thing. That's right. Let's talk more calmly. Don't say you want to cut ties. No, that's unacceptable. Our future as a couple is at stake. We will take this opportunity to sever ties with you. What are you saying? How can you speak to your parents like that? Chris had a stern look, but it wasn't in his nature to say such things. The problem lies with Sharon and Dolly, who have forced him to make this decision. Their actions necessitated such a drastic decision. I took over from Chris and reiterated the specific conditions to Sharon and Dolly. As we discussed before, please do not contact us or ask for money. If you can abide by this, we can tell you where the storage is. The cost of using the storage is your responsibility. Also, don't forget to repay the travel expenses. What are you saying? Don't make impossible demands. We don't have that kind of money. Do you really understand? Both my mother and I don't have jobs. Why are they so shameless? Are Sharon and Dolly truly without shame? If I were in their position, I could never speak like that. Chris was also taken aback by their unreasonable statements. There was no longer any anger in his eyes. Enough. Can you really say such things without a second thought? You really are like parasites. Become more independent, stop relying on us, and learn to support yourselves. Children normally rely on their parents for support. What do you mean by calling us parasites? Indeed, parental support is natural, and I have been doing that for years. However, there is a limit. Didn't mother and sister not only fail to do what they could, but also lied? A bug. Suddenly, when I pointed to the ground near Sharon's feet, Sharon gave a short scream and quickly got up from her seat, moving to the wall. Her agile movement didn't seem to belong to someone suffering from back pain. It seems that Sharon realized I had made up the bug. She became very angry, her face turning red. Liar. I was deceived. I'm sorry. However, isn't it mutual? You did use your back pain as a reason to make me do household chores and repairs, right? Furthermore, you fleeced me of money under the guise of treatment for the hot springs. Wasn't it for your back? Who is the real liar here? Just stop it. Sharon was unable to respond. She looked at the floor in frustration and bit her lip. Chris urged her to return to her seat, and she came back muttering her dissatisfaction. It seemed she had lost the energy to argue and was disappointed. On the other hand, Dolly was still ready to fight, anger evident in her eyes. Both of you lack respect for your elders. Stealing our belongings and threatening us, lying, ambushing, calling us parasites. I am furious. We did not want to respond in this way or tone either. As I've said before, you two have driven us to this situation. Please understand that. There's one more thing I'd like to ask. Sharon, Dolly, why don't you try working? You should be independent and support yourselves. Isn't that possible? Both of you are healthy and have no chronic illnesses. You have time and you owe me a debt. If you don't want to be called parasites, you have every reason to work. Looking at Dolly's face trembling with anger, we felt our stance was justified, but it seemed they were still not convinced. Changing Dolly's stubborn attitude might require more than just our efforts. But there was no need to rush, as everything was going according to plan. I subtly signaled to someone sitting at the back of the cafe. Responding to the signal, a man stood up and approached. As he appeared, Dolly's expression dramatically changed. The person who appeared was none other than Dolly's former husband, Tony. Indeed, Chris and I had contacted Tony in advance for this day and arranged for him to come. Tony's face lacked the warmth it once had, and it was clear that any love he had for Dolly had completely vanished. His gaze was cold as he looked sternly at Dolly and said, "Dolly, it's been a while. You still haven't changed. It's really surprising." Dolly couldn't hide her disturbance and asked Tony, "Why are you here? Did they call you?" "What hasn't changed?" Tony answered calmly, "It seems you're still living by deceiving others. Just like you deceived me, are you deceiving Chris and Anita too? You dishonest woman." I was shocked by his words. "Did you have an affair, Dolly?" Previously, Dolly had told us that her husband's infidelity was the reason for their divorce. However, her failure to deny Tony's accusations made it likely that his claims were true. It became clear from this situation that Dolly had been lying to us. She was the one who had an affair and caused the divorce. She was pretentious, arrogant, dishonest, and had been hiding her true nature, which was now exposed. My dislike for Dolly deepened in my heart, and I was aware of how much my feelings towards her had intensified. If you had returned to your hometown and kept quiet, I wouldn't have said anything. But Dolly, it seems you're causing trouble here too. Dolly defiantly responded, "So what? That has nothing to do with you, does it?" Tony calmly retorted, "It's not entirely unrelated. I am your ex-husband. If I had been stricter with you, maybe Chris and Anita wouldn't have had to suffer so much." Confused, Dolly demanded, "What? What exactly are you trying to say? Tell me clearly." At that moment, Tony calmly took a document out of his inner pocket and slammed it on the table. The presence of the document rapidly turned Dolly's complexion pale. The document was prominently labeled "Demand for Property Division for Adultery," and it clearly stated that she must pay $30,000 within a week. Dolly panicked and shook her head. "Impossible. This is absurd. I can't pay $30,000. I just told you. I don't have a job, I have no savings, only debts," Dolly shouted. Tony was firm in his response. "So what? If you don't have money, you need to work. Work hard and pay it back. That's the least you can do to make amends. And by the way, the compensation should be paid in full." Dolly, crying, pleaded, "But that's impossible. Mom, say something." However, Sharon coldly replied, "What do you want me to say? You were the one who cheated. Don't drag me into this. You work and pay the compensation yourself." Eventually, a fallout occurred between them, creating an unsightly scene. The behavior of Sharon and Dolly was truly distasteful, and I felt a severe lesson was necessary for them. Without harsh measures, they likely would not learn their lesson. I confidently presented a medical diagnosis from the hospital in front of both of them. "This is a medical report from the hospital. Based on this, I will sue you," I declared. Dolly was shocked. "What? You're suing us?" Sharon also panicked. "Don't be foolish. Why would you sue us?" I calmly answered, "As I mentioned before, the illness I developed may have been caused by the stress from both of you. This constitutes assault." When I specified the possible charge, Sharon and Dolly were even more shocked. Hearing that the statutory penalty for the crime could be up to 15 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000, they began to feel real fear. Knowing the possibility of a lawsuit, they couldn't hide their disturbance. Their previous confidence vanished, and they began to tremble. In a situation where they had completely lost the will to resist or justify further, standing there with dejected expressions, I unfolded another document in front of Sharon and Dolly. At that moment, surprise and confusion mingled between them. "What is this?" Sharon asked. I began to explain in a calm tone. "This is a pledge I have prepared. You and Dolly need to abide by the commitments listed here. If there is a violation, be prepared that I won't hesitate to take legal action." The pledge contained a wide range of clauses. The pledge included not summoning me to serve them like a servant, not demanding money from my husband no matter how financially troubled they were, earning their own living by working, and repaying the money they had borrowed. Additionally, the document reminded Dolly to not forget to pay the full amount of alimony to her ex-husband, Tony. After quietly reading the entire document, Sharon and Dolly, with tears in their eyes and shaking their heads, protested, "You are cruel. It's impossible to keep such promises. Paying the alimony in full is impossible. I would have to take on more debt. It doesn't matter if you have to go into debt. Then, working diligently to pay it back is the minimum obligation required of you. You have been playing around for too long. Why not think about working seriously from now on?" Sharon and Dolly gave up all resistance to our stern words and could only hang their heads in defeat. Seeing them like this, I finally felt a sense of relief. Later, it seemed Sharon and Dolly took various jobs. They registered with an agency that introduces temporary work, such as building cleaning staff, construction site guides, and logistics center workers. They might be unable to secure regular jobs because they cannot pass interviews, especially since Sharon is 65 years old, which is understandably a factor. Dolly also appears to be a difficult woman to manage, which is why many companies might hesitate to hire them. They are likely to continue with sporadic temporary jobs and live day-to-day. Sharon and Dolly paid off their debts and the money they had borrowed, including alimony, by taking loans. But since these loans came from loan sharks, a delay in payments could lead to serious issues. Their desperate work situation is understandable. Once, I saw Dolly working in the city. She was struggling to make ends meet. She was dressed in a uniform, wearing a helmet, and was directing traffic at a construction site. When our eyes met, she turned away in embarrassment. She should have been more assertive, but she behaved oddly. I also saw Sharon doing a part-time job stocking shelves in a supermarket. She was clearly being scolded by a younger colleague and looked very displeased. Given their coy character, it is likely that they will face problems eventually. They might struggle with workplace relationships, be forced to quit their jobs, and end up searching for new employment. I hope that Sharon and Dolly will regret their actions as they move from job to job. That is what I expect from them now. Since then, Chris and I have continued to live a simple yet happy life. We are no longer troubled by Sharon or Dolly, and we have regained our physical and mental health. As a result, we were eventually blessed with our long-awaited first child. Currently, I am on maternity leave, spending peaceful days with my baby in my belly. The baby is a girl. My goal is to raise her to be a fully fledged woman. In the process, there will be opportunities to talk about Sharon and Dolly. This is to teach her not to become like them. There have been tough times, but from now on, I plan to spend happy days with Chris and our child. Are my dad and mom's move finished? Ben decided on his own that we would live together without consulting me, and he didn't help at all. He never seems to want to listen to my opinion. He proceeds with things based on his own ideas and acts on his own. Even now, he only asked about the situation over the phone, but I don't even know where he is. I had been disappointed in Ben before, but it was thanks to that person that I finally made up my mind. Yes, it's all finished. I just moved into a high-rise condo myself. What? While hearing his surprised voice, I laughed with my son, Aaron, who was next to me. He had left everything up to me, so he hadn't noticed anything. What do you mean with a high-rise condo? A high-rise condo means just that. A high-rise condo. With that, I ended the call. The next day, Ben contacted me. Apparently, he had ended a trip with his beloved parents in the middle to come and see our house. There's nothing here. Where is the luggage? Where could it be? What do you mean, where could it be? For details, please ask that person directly. After saying that, I heard a voice of anger from the other end of the phone. I, Cindy, am a 57-year-old housewife. When I was younger, I worked in sales, where I was a top performer and secured many contracts, so I was relied upon in my department. However, I quit because Ben, who was once my boss and trainer, asked me to. After many talks and discussions we had together, Ben confessed as we were close in age, and after several years of dating, we got married. He asked me to quit my job and dedicate myself to the family, promising that he would never let me struggle, so I resigned upon marrying despite having many regrets. After that, at the age of 33, I gave birth to our son, Aaron, and it felt like I was leading a happy family life. Ben doted on Aaron very much, sometimes to the point of spoiling him, which often exasperated me. On the other hand, I didn't have a good relationship with my in-laws, especially with my mother-in-law, Diane, with whom I often disagreed about how to raise Aaron, resulting in a strained relationship. It was around this time that Aaron went to university, became independent, and started living alone. Ben reluctantly agreed on the condition that he would visit regularly. After that, it was just the two of us. But Ben started diverting the money he used to spend on Aaron to his own parents. While there was nothing wrong with that, the continued purchase of luxury goods, trips, and gourmet food continued. Aaron didn't need them, so there was no problem. But my mother-in-law, who would take anything she could get, started to affect our finances. Ben, where is the $1,000 I left here? I used it because Mom said she needed a wallet. What are you talking about? I told you not to touch it because it's for the rent. Shut up. It's my money that I earned. What's wrong with spending it as I like? A mere housewife like you shouldn't complain to the head of the house. Whenever I say anything about money, Ben raises his voice in objection. Housewife. That's a term Ben often brings up during our arguments. You're the one who asked me to become a housewife. You being unemployed is a fact. If you can't earn, don't complain. If you hate me being unemployed, I'll go out and get a part-time job. Hey, don't joke around. If I allow my wife to work outside, I'll be seen as incompetent. There are still people with such views today. Ben, unnecessarily proud, wouldn't accept me working outside. When I started working secretly, he found out through his mother where I was working and came yelling at me. In such circumstances, I couldn't even take up a part-time job, so I had no choice but to start working from home. Initially, the income was modest, but it gradually increased, and I was able to manage by using the money for living expenses. Honestly, if the income continues to increase, I might consider divorcing Ben. One day, when I was working from home, the doorbell suddenly rang. I wasn't expecting any visitors, but thinking it might be a delivery, I opened the door to find my mother-in-law standing there. Hi, is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, you shut in. She yelled as barged into the house. Again, this word shut in filled me with disgust. When I was working, my mother-in-law had told me to quit and become a housewife. But once I actually retired upon marriage, she started blaming me like this. Ben is earning money, and that's how you can live. Yet, you dared to defy your husband. She would not listen to me at all and kept attacking me until she was satisfied. Just when I thought I couldn't concentrate on work because of this situation. Diane, how many times do I need to say it? Stop bothering Cindy. Darling. Cindy, I'm sorry that Diane is bothering you again. My father-in-law, Henry, had come to take my mother-in-law home. He has always been rational, and ever since he retired, he has been gardening while also keeping my overly assertive mother-in-law in check. He had returned from gardening today and, noticing my mother-in-law was missing, came over worried. I had received his help many times. When will I see my grandchild? My mother-in-law once asked. If you keep pressuring Cindy like that, she'll feel even less like having children. He had defended me when I was struggling with fertility issues and alleviated the pressure from my mother-in-law. And after Aaron was born, when my mother-in-law tried to take him from me, this child is a precious heir. I will raise him. Please give Aaron back. Then saying enough, my father-in-law rescued Aaron from her hands. He also scrapped the cohabitation plan that had been proposed at the time when he saw that my mother-in-law might become too intrusive. Ben had sided with his mother and wanted to live together, but thanks to my father-in-law firmly saying, "You're the husband. Put your wife and child first," we were able to avoid cohabitation. If I had lived with my mother-in-law, I might not have endured her mistreatment. I am very grateful to my father-in-law. Thanks to him, I've been able to maintain a reasonable distance from my in-laws. Amidst being frustrated with life with Ben, I suddenly received news that my mother had passed away. She had a chronic illness, and my sister had been caring for her. My father passed away early, and my mother hadn't touched the assets he left, resulting in a considerable inheritance for my sister and me. What will you do about your parents' home? Ben asked me. My sister has her own home, so she said she'd give it to me if I want it. How about moving to your parents' home then? He suggested while we were sorting out the inheritance. We currently live in a rented house, but my parents' home is quite old. Yes, how about moving after renovating it? I suggested. How will you fund the renovations? Ben asked. I'll use the inheritance, I replied. I haven't told Ben the specific amount of the inheritance. If he knew there was a large amount, he might give it to his mother. That's why I've only told him about the renovation costs. That shouldn't be a problem then, Ben agreed. I felt relieved inside. Moving to my parents' home would mean being long distance from my in-laws. That means I could also keep a distance from the problematic mother-in-law. With that in mind, I began actively preparing to move. The renovations were eventually completed, and I moved to my parents' home. What's this? I thought, because there were more boxes than expected. The moving company handled it, but I was surprised by the amount. While having my suspicions, I opened a box of unrecognizable luggage and found my mother-in-law's clothes inside. Ben, there's a box here packed with your mother's clothes. What's this all about? I asked. Did I forget to tell you? My parents and I are going to live in this house together. What? I was astonished. I was dumbfounded by this sudden announcement. Why do we need to live with my in-laws in my parents' house? I couldn't help but argue with Ben. I didn't hear anything about this. The renovation using the inheritance was meant for us to live together. Shut up. I've already decided. Ben raised his voice and pulled out a document. Holding the document, I was shocked. A divorce paper? If you oppose it, it's divorce. How will you live if you leave me, an unemployed woman? Ben said. The divorce paper already had Ben's signature on it. While I stood there stunned, Ben started packing his travel bag with clothes. Pack up the luggage and prepare for my parents' move by the time I get back. Wait, where are you going? I asked. I'm going on a little trip. I sold my parents' house, so I'll use that money. I'll stay at my parents' house for 2 or 3 days, then go on a luxurious trip for a week. Ben answered and left. I was left feeling the worst. The cohabitation was decided without my consent. He left the bothersome task of sorting things to me, and he went on a trip with his parents. At that moment, I decided to retaliate thoroughly. During the preparations to move, I spread the insecticide I had stored throughout the house and left. I am very averse to insects, and although I knew the renovated house was safe, I had bought the insecticide just in case. As I looked at the divorce paper in my hand, the phone suddenly rang. That call led me to make a significant decision. Aaron, it's been a while. Mom, what's up? I contacted Aaron and received some help from him. 3 hours later, an unwelcome call from my mother-in-law came. You made me go through something terrible. What? It turned out that my mother-in-law had borrowed a spare key from Ben and entered the house without permission, just after I had spread the insecticide. And she almost fell from breathing in the air. She threatened at the end, I'll sue you. I felt it was karma. It's a far bigger issue to enter someone's house without permission, I retorted and hung up the phone. Since she's still lively enough to complain over the phone, she must be fine despite inhaling the insecticide. Thinking about cutting ties with such a family made me feel relieved. And a week later, when everything had settled, Ben, who hadn't contacted me at all, reached out. Are my dad and mom's move finished? Ben decided on his own that we would live together without consulting me, and he didn't help at all. He never seems to want to listen to my opinion. He proceeds with things based on his own ideas and acts on his own. Even now, he only asked about the situation over the phone, but I don't even know where he is. I had been disappointed in Ben before, but it was thanks to that person that I finally made up my mind. Yes, it's all finished. I just moved into a high-rise condo myself. More. While hearing his surprised voice, I laughed with my son, Aaron, who was next to me. He had left everything up to me, so he hadn't noticed anything. What do you mean with a high-rise condo? A high-rise condo means just that. A high-rise condo. With that, I ended the call. Finally, I was able to cut ties with Ben. My gratitude for the people who cooperated with Aaron was immeasurable. Thinking back, I headed to the sparkling new kitchen to prepare a special meal for Aaron. That day, when I told Aaron everything over the phone, he came to help right away. It's good you could come, but is work okay? No problem. I explained the situation, and they told me to go right away. Aaron works in real estate, and his company was started by a college senior. Since he had helped since his student days, it seems they understood immediately when he explained the situation. Mom, I need you to finish the contract today or tomorrow. I understand. So, I completed the necessary procedures and I was able to move into the new high-rise condo. Today, as I was preparing for the celebration, Ben contacted me. Just imagining the reaction of my selfish husband and meddling mother-in-law when they visit the new home excites me. Hey, what's this? The next day, Ben contacted me. Apparently, he had ended a trip with his beloved parents in the middle to come and see our house. There's nothing here. Where is the luggage? Where could it be? What do you mean, where could it be? For details, please ask that person directly. After saying that, I could hear a voice of anger from the other end of the phone. Enough with the jokes. Ben let out a small scream. Hearing that voice and trying to suppress my laughter, Aaron appeared. Cindy, I'm sorry for the trouble my family has caused. Soon after, I heard my father-in-law's voice from the other end of the phone. They seemed to be on speaker, and I could faintly hear Ben and my mother-in-law's voices as well. It's okay. You supported me. What's that? Explain. I sent your luggage to another location. The day Ben left the house, it was my father-in-law who contacted me. He first apologized for not being able to stop the unilateral actions of Ben and my mother-in-law. Then he said he would handle them and decided to send their luggage to the specified address. Thanks to the movers arranged by my father-in-law, the luggage transfer went smoothly. So, what will happen to this house? After explaining everything, I heard Ben's voice of confusion. I sold that house. What? You sold it? Why would you do something like that on your own? That house was inherited by me. My sister didn't want it, so she agreed it was okay to sell, and I decided to sell it. What's the problem? The house was well located and had been beautifully renovated, so it quickly found a buyer. In fact, Aaron Sr. liked it and immediately offered to buy it. As a result, the house was already owned by its new owner. Isn't that a bit too selfish? Ben, which mouth of yours can say such things? It was you who decided everything without listening to Cindy's opinion. Now I will show you where you two will live. Wait a moment. What do you mean by you two? I've had enough of Diane. Hopefully, this way you'll understand. In the calm yet stern voice of my father-in-law, I could sense my mother-in-law's surprise. She was probably under my father-in-law's sharp gaze. Dad and Grandma, you're underestimating Mom too much. At that moment, Aaron, standing next to me, said as calmly as my father-in-law, I've heard everything from Mom. Why should my mom, who renovated the house after receiving it from Grandma and Auntie, have to give it to you guys? Dad, you must know how Grandma has been treating Mom. Despite that, why would you consider living together? Aaron, that's no way to speak to your father. Father? Just giving orders and expecting obedience. Is that what a father does? You ignored Mom's opinions, and sometimes mine too, didn't you? Honestly, I don't want to be a father like you, and I don't want my loved ones to meet people like Grandma. The direct words from Aaron, whom they had doted on, left them speechless. After that, I could hear my father-in-law sighing on the other end of the phone. I'm truly sorry, Cindy, he said, and then he ended the call. Just before the call ended, I heard surprised voices from Ben and my mother-in-law. With that, My father-in-law will probably handle those too. By the way, this high-rise condo is really wonderful, isn't it? Yes, I was hoping I could live here someday. The purchase of this high-rise condo was smoothly financed with the money from selling the house, my savings from when I was single, and the remaining inheritance. It looks like I will be able to live off the income from my work-at-home job. It seems like we'll have peaceful days ahead for a while. You know, I actually valued mom over dad because you taught me proper things, even though you were strict. According to Aaron, while Ben would buy him anything he wanted, he seldom provided strict guidance and rarely listened to him. Even when he talked about school, Ben would just say I see and not engage seriously, always suggesting, let's go shopping next holiday, only wanting to go where he wanted. More than Ben, it was important for me to listen carefully, sometimes scold him, and seriously consider his future. It's true that since Aaron got through his rebellious phase, he occasionally gave Ben cold looks. Also, I remember when Ben was criticizing me, Aaron would intervene as if to protect me, saying, "That can wait. We have something important to discuss now." Children are more sensitive to their parents' actions than we might think. Every time Dad said something to you, Mom, he would insult you for being unemployed. So, I decided to send money to help you. Huh? I hadn't heard about that. I heard it from Grandpa. Apparently, all the money I sent ended up going to Grandma. My father-in-law had long suspected my mother-in-law's extravagant lifestyle. Indeed, Ben was sending her travel vouchers and gourmet food, but that wasn't all. Aside from that, my mother-in-law was frequently enjoying luxury lunches and shopping. The gifts Ben sent every month couldn't possibly explain it all. Despite this, the shared savings remained untouched. Turns out that all the remittances from Aaron were being taken by Ben and passed directly to my mother-in-law. I can't believe it. Knowing that, I've decided I don't want anything more to do with Dad. Aaron's expression was stern, clearly indicating his resolve. He seemed to be at the peak of his anger. I no longer intend to support Dad, and Grandpa said he's going to divorce Grandma. That's right. As Aaron said, my father-in-law proceeded with the divorce from my mother-in-law afterward. My mother-in-law tried to cling to my father-in-law, but he was fed up with her and Ben's self-centered actions and coldly pushed them away. I'll split the assets, but don't expect any inheritance. My father-in-law stated decisively, deciding to spend all his available funds and move into a facility. Due to my mother-in-law's wastefulness, there wasn't much inheritance left in the first place. Afterward, my father-in-law moved into the facility, letting go of my mother-in-law and Ben. As I was finally enjoying some peaceful days, I got another call from Ben. "Hey, it's me, Ben. I know. What do you want?" It's really tough, really. Reluctantly listening to him, the wasteful spending by my mother-in-law continued as usual. Ben had used up all the money he earned, and now they were even dipping into their living expenses. Previously, I supported the household with the money I earned, and we had remittances from Aaron, but now that these were gone, they were in a difficult situation. "You're my wife, aren't you? Help me." "No, I'm not your wife anymore." What? The divorce papers I received that day were promptly filled out and submitted by me. That means our marital relationship had already ended long ago. Unbelievable. Why did you submit it that day? You were the one who wrote it and brought it to me, right? I just followed through and submitted it. There shouldn't be any problem. Ben was at a loss for words upon hearing my response. He probably didn't anticipate that his own actions would backfire on him. "So, can't we start over?" "What? No way. I've finally become free from you. There's no reason to go back." As I responded coldly, there was a noise on the other end of the phone. "It's me, Cindy." "What is it, Diane?" It seemed like my mother-in-law had picked up the phone. I felt a strong aversion inside me upon hearing her contrived, sweet voice. "I'm really sorry for being cold to you. So, do you remember how much I suffered? You tried to make me quit my job even before we were married, blamed me for not being able to have children, and tried to take Aaron away from me. If it weren't for my father-in-law helping, things would have been much worse. If you were in the same situation, do you think you could forgive me? My mother-in-law kept silent after my question. I will never forget nor forgive the treatment I received from her. And I have no intention to forgive Ben either. While you two were happily traveling, I was being ignored, wasn't I? From now on, please enjoy your wonderful lives. Goodbye. After declaring that, I hung up the phone, blocked his number, and cut off all ties with Ben and his family. Afterward, I heard that Ben and my mother-in-law were reluctantly living in a cheap apartment provided by my father-in-law. Ben had spent so much on his mother that there was hardly any savings left. He had a decent income, so he initially planned to save a bit before moving out. My mother-in-law tried to start housekeeping but was unable to curb her spending habits and do housekeeping, since she had been away from domestic chores for years, thanks to my father-in-law who had retired and taken over the household duties. While she was unaccustomed to housework, she fell and broke her leg, necessitating care. Overwhelmed with caregiving and housework, Ben accumulated fatigue, which led to mistakes at work, resulting in an irrevocable error that eventually forced him to resign. That's why he contacted me for help. Aaron visited and reported on Ben's plight, but he declined to help him. He should have at least saved the money I sent. Indeed, but regretting it now won't help. Meanwhile, my life was progressing smoothly. Thanks to Aaron and his friends recommending me, my client base for home-based work has increased, significantly improving my income. Aaron, who used to barely visit when Ben was around, now comes by frequently, and although he offers to send money, I decline as I'm not struggling financially due to my earnings. Thanks to that, Aaron has been able to save money and has moved into the same high-rise condo. Whenever I bring over some side dishes, he is always delighted and grateful. I'm truly happy. Being able to work at my own pace and having my beloved Darren nearby makes every day immensely joyful for me. Years have passed. Today is a special day. Mom, I want to introduce someone to you. It's the day Aaron is bringing his fiancée. She is someone I've known well for a long time since she has been dating Aaron since high school. Ben doesn't know about this because it would cause trouble if he found out. Well, I doubt he would be interested anyway. Aaron is a bit too kind, so I feel reassured to entrust him to his capable fiancé. Just this time there is a formal greeting as fiancé and mother, so both of us are somewhat nervous. We know each other, so relax. By the way, there's something important I need to tell you. To my surprise, she was already pregnant with Aaron's child. That's what led to a prompt marriage. But seeing them so happy, I sent my heartfelt blessings. Determined not to become like my mother-in-law, I decided to support them while maintaining a healthy distance. Thanks to such measures, I feel that the relationship with my daughter-in-law is being well maintained. Occasionally, they come to show me their child's face, and we have been going out more frequently without burdening each other. Contrarily, I am unaware of the current situation of Ben and my mother-in-law as they have been abandoned by others. One's actions ultimately return to oneself. I must act carefully. With this awareness, I continue to work and handle household chores within my limits, enjoying a peaceful daily life.